Welcome to the AI Edge podcast. We're here to help marketing professionals stay on the cutting edge of AI news and its impact on marketing and advertising. Welcome to today's show. We have a very special guest with us today on the AI Edge podcast. We have Akaash from Adskate. Akaash, introduce yourself, please.
Hey, thanks, Shiv. So, like Shiv said, my name's Akaash. I'm one of the co-founders of Adskate. And at Adskate, what we do is that we apply AI to study different creatives. So in that way, we're giving brands and agencies a new dimension to think about how they should be marketing themselves.
Love it. Awesome. And then I forgot my fearless co-host. We also have him here, Myles. Hey, how are you?
Hey, Akaash.
Okay, so we have a lot of fun stories to get into this week. So I want to kick things off with one of the big ones, which was there was an announcement that Apple is doing a deal with Google and Gemini around Siri, right? So I think it's been long understood and accepted that Siri kind of stinks, and like Siri is not actually the futuristic robot in your pocket that you wish it was, because it's not great at actually understanding what you're saying, and it's not great at actually like regurgitating anything all that useful. And so everybody knows this, and this is true of like Google Home, Amazon Alexa. I think all of those like at like home, whatever you want. What are they called? Listening, whatever they're called. Man, I'm not with it right now. Those devices are not actually smart devices. The smart home devices are actually not smart devices. So really exciting to hear that Apple is going to pursue using one of the new kind of models, the AI models, to make Siri smarter. But in a weird turn of events, they're partnering with Google and not OpenAI to upgrade Siri. And so obviously tons of implications from the story. The fact that Apple is picking one of its biggest rivals to be the AI in Siri as opposed to going with the independent AI company OpenAI is a huge deal. I think it kind of demonstrates how much of an advantage Google has already created for itself over OpenAI when Apple is picking Google instead of OpenAI. So anyways, that was a big story. Any quick thoughts, responses, any implications just for marketers on that story? Let's start with you, Myles.
Jeez. I mean, it felt like pre LLM, so like pre 2022, if any company was going to like nail it with making computers just kind of like helpful ambiently helpful to your life, it was going to be Apple. You were just going to be enclosed in this blanket of helpful computers that like every device type form factor that you needed at just the right time and just the right way. It was going to be Apple, and then fast forward to 2026 and they're just like outsourcing Google's model, which I don't know, it still just strikes me as crazy. And I'm not an Apple geek, and so I don't like follow their releases or I don't know their stock price or something, but it's just like, when are they going to sort of step up and I guess kind of like really achieve today's version of the "it just works" mantra, which clearly involves LLMs, and yet they're outsourcing.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, listen, this would have never happened under Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
This
right,
just would
exactly.
have never in a million gazillion years would have happened if Steve Jobs was CEO. He would have been like, there's no way in hell we are partnering with Google for AI. We're going to beat Google at AI.
Yeah.
Gemini is actually really not user friendly and has not been thoughtfully integrated into all their products. We are going to do that. We are Apple. But, Steve Jobs isn't here anymore. Rest in peace, Steve Jobs. And Tim Cook has not... Tim, I was talking to somebody at CES about this. Tim has been an incredible CEO from a shareholder value creation standpoint. He has created, I saw some crazy stat. He's created something like $1 million a second of value for the last 10 years he's been CEO. So it's like kind of bonkers how much value he's created for shareholders. But if you just think about it as the average person on the street, you're like, man, Apple did a lot of innovative stuff when Steve Jobs was CEO, and they haven't really done that much innovative stuff since Tim Cook's been CEO. So, I think you're right on that. Hey, from an ad perspective, and Akaash, let's come to you next. From an ad perspective, I think The big question is going to be the data, in my opinion, right? Of just like, if Google Gemini is integrated into Siri, and we know Google obviously sucks data from every single surface and every single, interaction that they get with consumers, is there going to be a data angle there, right? Where they get some access to like consumer sentiments or intent or anything through Siri to fuel the Google ad machine, right? That to me is what's going to be interesting. Now, I would imagine like there's going to be a lot of limitation there if they're doing a deal with Apple, but who knows? I don't know. Akaash, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, totally. And this falls into the realm of things that you just hinted upon, which is privacy. It all falls down or boils down to the first party data angle. So this goes down the realm of whether Google's going to be using Apple's information for training, and how is it that they're going to correspond to Apple and Apple users too. So this is where capturing of first party data or first party cookies come into place, and also what's going to happen to the broader implication of it. And if they're trying to tie all of this back into shopping, like people purchasing stuff online, who is essentially going to be the propriety holder of that data too? That's going to be a fascinating story to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, 100%. I think Apple. I mean, the other thing that we're not talking about here is just another OpenAI kind of flub, in my opinion. And it's interesting, right? Because OpenAI is obviously talking, or there's speculation about ads in ChatGPT, and that's an obvious thing that's going to happen. But it feels like just Google already had a massive head start when it came to marketing and advertising on OpenAI. And it's just growing. It's just like, this is just another example of it growing. And that actually is a nice segue into the next story. So let's talk about the next story. Google made a bunch of announcements at a big retail conference called NRF. And, there was a bunch of things in there that they said. One of the main things that they said is they're announcing a new Universal Commerce Protocol, UCP, which is basically like an open standard for commerce agents to be able to talk to each other and work with each other to help enable agentic commerce, right? So if I'm a user and I want to start buying products through my LLM, let's say it's Gemini, I can go into Gemini, I can start browsing things at retailers like Walmart, Shopify, Target, etc. I can actually compare, I can actually put in payment information and complete the end-to-end process in the LLM, right? So UCP would be an important kind of aspect of that, because it would allow all of the agents of the different retailers, the payment companies, the LLM itself, maybe some other kind of useful things that could help commerce all kind of talk to each other in a universal way. And so I think that's important. A couple of angles there is Google's gotten like 20 plus retailers on board with UCP already. And Gemini obviously is like the flagship LLM that's utilizing UCP, obviously. And they're the big retailers, right? It is Walmart, it is Target, it's Albertsons, it's Shopify. And it's interesting because all of those retailers are kind of banding together, I think, with like kind of the anti-Amazon, hey, like we're taking down Amazon by enabling agentic commerce, and Amazon's doing its own thing with Rufus and blocking us out. So we're going to band together, but they're banding together with Google, which is like, it's a little risky, I think, for the retailers. If they just look at history, like Google's done a great job of just extracting value from publishers and from retailers, and more so from publishers in the past, but now maybe from retailers for their ad business, right? So there's a couple other announcements in there. One was they announced a business agents product where these retailers can actually use Google's technology to build agents for their own retail storefront. And those are kind of helpful chat bots and agentic commerce bots, things like that. Also, they announced a new ad format, which is called Google Direct Offers. So it's basically exclusive promotions that only exist in AI mode. So if you go to Google search and you type like, I'm looking for, Windows, Home Depot could surface maybe a 20% off offer for a specific type of window right in AI mode, right? So a lot of commerce focused announcements coming out of Google. I think there's a lot of interesting angles here. There's the anti-Amazon thing and Google kind of bringing the industry together to fend off Amazon's retail dominance with AI kind of as the frontier. So a lot there to unpack. Akaash, let's start with you. Any reactions to that news and what it all means?
Yeah, totally. We essentially now are moving into an age of zero-click commerce. It's kind of ironic that we're moving here because Google primed itself and also focused a whole lot on last click attribution. So now we are moving into a zero click commerce. That being said, this is where like studying creatives is going to become important. Now, this is going to be happening, like we spoke about, Shiv. It's going to be happening in the chat itself. So having an AI agent be able to assess the creative for a brand, let's say like Nike, within the Gemini chatbot itself is going to become crucial. So we're moving from a realm of visual emotionalism to metadata integrity. So it's going to come to a point at which people are going to want to know whether their metadata is holding value and whether it's being captured by the AI agent itself.
Now,
If your data or if your creative is not machine readable, you're in for trouble.
Akash, I have a question that maybe you have an early answer to or reaction to is, well, you tell us, do you think that LLMs are going to, like, let's just say you're inside Gemini or inside ChatGPT, are they going to integrate just kind of contextual, say, banner ads into the environment? Maybe it's off to the side, maybe it's at the top, whatever. Or are they going to integrate new native ad units so that the ad creative will just become integrated into your interactions with an LLM or with an agent, or something else? Like, from your perspective, how are you seeing, like, what is the creative that the shopper is actually exposed to? Like, what are their eyes looking at?
I think it's the former, like what you mentioned, based on someone keying, like a user like Shiv, if he's keying in, if he's trying to buy a specific car, he'll get an ad which is native to the car brand, but it'll be of a certain size. I think this is where here YouTube also becomes really key and clutch to Google on a whole, because everyone's soon enough going to be driven towards more video based ads, and the click out would be into the realm of YouTube itself. So that's where I think eventually everything is going to move into. And it's also easier for them to calibrate all the clicks, conversions to it becomes one ecosystem.
Yeah, okay, I have one other question, is just to make sure that our listeners and viewers understand what you mean. Can you walk through this, like the concept of creative metadata just for a second? Like, what is creative metadata in your world?
Yeah, truly. And great question. Let's say if you're Nike and you've launched an ad where LeBron James is involved and he is in a blue color background. Yeah, Shiv's not a fan, but let's say if he's there in a blue color background, the creative metadata is the capability of breaking down the creative into its different components. It could be the object, in this case, LeBron James, the background color, and then it could also be the text too involved in it. So it's the metadata is basically the different creative attributes that are involved in making an ad. The same notion also applies for video too. So in a video, you essentially would be studying the audio and the different visual elements too.
Yeah, awesome.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks.
Is the amount of metadata like kind of I'd imagine it's increasing a lot associated with video and especially like TV ads. I'd imagine like the different types of things that you can look at and observe and categorize and then have AI mine that data. Is that real? Is that true?
Yeah, truly. Yeah, you're spot on. You're essentially coming to a point at which people are trying to calibrate emotion too. The calibration of emotion through video ads is becoming a big thing. It always has been there in play, but now essentially you're coming to a realm at which you're able to study it in a lot more refined manner. Ads that are being made are more emotional in nature nowadays. And also music too is more scientific rather than just going based on feel.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the other thing that's interesting to think about in terms of like the, I don't know, direction of flow for creative is that, like, digital creative has always been kind of pushed to the user. So the advertiser or the agency or the tech platform just makes a decision, the best decision it can, and it pushes a creative to a user. Where you just mentioned like emotional metadata, where an agent could basically pull the right creative because the agent or the LLM, the chat, knows the emotional state of the shopper, the user, and is going to use that metadata potentially to select the thing that's going to be, the user's going to be most receptive to, or that's going to be the most helpful to them in the moment. And that's going to be unique literally to down to the individual. I mean, are we, is that happening at all? Like, are you seeing that yet? That shift from just straight up pushing creatives out to the world to AI pulling creatives that are like more contextually relevant?
Yeah, truly. In fact, it's happening in the ecosystem that we cater to. So, not to name names, but like one of the clients that we worked with was a lottery company for a state. And then they essentially had certain visual cues in their ad itself. So, they use a specific type of animal. By implementing our tech, we were able to say that, like, hey, don't implement the animal, implement the text of winning a specific amount through the lottery campaign itself. So we're coming down to a point at which, Miles, like visual cues are becoming a driving force, and especially in the realm of videos too, people are trying to understand like how a human would behave with an ad. So hence, like I mentioned earlier, having machine readable ads is going to become extremely important for an AI agent.
Thanks. Thank you.
Um, I want to bring it back. So really quickly, bringing it back to the Google and Amazon bit. I think as like I think we've talked about this a lot on the podcast of, is agentic commerce real? Is it not? It feels like, if Google's putting all of these eggs into that basket, it's getting all these retailers to do so. I think we're onto something here. And it is, Akash, you bring up a really interesting point, right? Like, and Myles, of how does it kind of collapse the funnel a little bit? How does it kind of change, like upper funnel, let's say, or even mid funnel commerce media, right? If I'm not browsing the web as much to go on my shopping journey and I'm more so just transacting and talking and discovering and doing all the things within an LLM, where and how does the advertising come into play and how does it appeal to me? Do we lose some element of the sight sound motion that we have today through banner ads and video ads and pre-roll and mid-roll? And what does that become, right? And I think those are really interesting themes to unpack and think about, as it pertains to this particular story, but just in general, right? And so interesting times ahead. I think retailers need to be cautious about working with Google. Obviously, we have a lot of examples, again, from history where publishers working with Google didn't necessarily work out in their favor. And so, is history repeating itself, perhaps with like UCP and these new agent type of technologies that Google is enabling retailers with potentially. I think it's interesting for marketers, right? Marketers, I think, need to be thinking about like how to work with Google on the commerce front and what kind of new ad formats they offer, or even just like discoverability within the LLM and thinking about GEO and AEO, etc. And then I think for Amazon, it's a little scary. Amazon's got to be thinking about this and figuring out like what their strategy is. Their strategy's been very clear so far. They're like, hey, we're going down this Rufus path and we're kind of walling everything else off. But I think this is interesting, right? And they have to be sitting there thinking about it and being a little concerned about it. Okay, let's wrap that. Couple other things that happened this past week. I thought this was an interesting story. Not a huge deal, but do you guys use Slack? Myles, I know you use Slack because it's Slack you all the time.
Begrudgingly.
Begrudgingly, yeah. Akaash, do you use Slack?
Yeah, I think it's time for me to add Miles to my Slack.
There you go. I think I bet 90+% of people listening to this podcast use Slack, and everybody who uses Slack is very aware of Slackbot. Slackbot, the little thing that's like constantly slacking you and making the little noise, the noise. And it's like, why are you talking to me? Like, what are you trying to tell me? This is useless. So apparently, Salesforce, which owns Slack, is giving Slackbot an upgrade. And Slackbot is going to become more AI enabled. It's going to become kind of like a marketing terminal of sorts. It's going to be able to help you with your briefs. It's going to automate workflows and things like that. I think that's interesting, right? Especially given that Salesforce owns Slack, and Salesforce very much is a marketing company for all intents and purposes. I think that's interesting. There was a couple other things that happened this past week. Disney announced a bunch of new tools. AI tools at CES. There's a self-service advertising tool. There's a video and creative tool that they announced at CES. And those are kind of the things. So with that, Akaash, I want to transition a little bit into your work at Adskate. So tell our listeners a little bit more about what you guys do, how you work with marketers, how you use AI in your technology. We'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, totally. And thank you. Essentially, the way Adscate works is pretty straightforward. We are we are an AI enabled tool that enables marketers as well as brands to study creatives much better. So what I mean by that is, like Myles was probing earlier, we're able to study the creative at a much more ground truth and a more finite level. We're able to break the creative down into its elemental composite level. So if a brand wants to understand what is it within a creative functions, that's where we step in. So today we have been able to serve different types of CTV campaign, different types of brands, worked with all types of different agencies too, right from, let's say, fast commerce to healthcare campaigns too. We're realizing that the demand is not segmented based on a specific vertical. It's actually far wide and reaching too.
So if I'm a marketer, I'm coming to you for deep kind of insights and analytics that come out of my creative, whether that's video creative, CTV creative, display creative, that then help inform what? Like how I build more creative, how I optimize which channels my creatives are running in. Like what's I guess what's the outcome or the use case that you're applying the technology to?
Right, the takeaways, right? So through our platform or through our product, what we have enabled the end customer is to do is to get key takeaways. How do you improve your campaign? How do you optimize your campaign? And in the future, if you're going to build certain types of, let's say, upper funnel or lower funnel campaigns, we're essentially able to guide them through that whole journey. The platform essentially is an enabler. It's not a replacer. And I think that's fundamentally what I always tell different brands, different marketers too. They shouldn't be afraid of adoption. They should in fact embrace it because it leads them to conduct their body of work quicker.
Hey, I got a question. Between when you launched Adskate or originally started working on it and today, I mean, a lot has been changing with AI in the last couple of years. It's the pace of change. It just continues to pick up. Like, what has been the biggest surprise or new thing? I have to imagine there's a long list of things that you were not building for that kind of just came about organically that AdScate's reacted to or built upon, or I would love to know like what surprised you.
Yeah, this kind of dates back to when I first met you guys too. 2021 when we first met up to now, like there's been a massive evolution and there's been a massive change. Facebook ads, back when I was working the agency realm of things, it used to be extremely complicated to use. It's come down to a point at which usability of products have improved a whole lot, because of which people are able to understand what the outcome is. Products are becoming lesser of a black box, even though it still is, but it's becoming a lesser of a black box because of which a layman or a common man is able to understand the products that like Facebook or Meta or even Google Ads is throwing out. So that's one major improvement. From a modeling perspective, we are coming to a realm at which models are already put out. Fine tuning them is where the skill lies. So essentially, let's say if we are catering to Adidas and Nike for their basketball vertical, back in the heyday, you would spend a lot of time building a model for the basketball vertical. Now it's fine tuning the model based on a specific team or a specific player. So
Okay.
that way, your path to production, which used to be a long tail exercise, now has become really quick. That's why you're seeing a lot many folks who are 24, 25 able to launch companies quickly, which essentially would have been a long tail affair for them.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that sort of the distinction between, for instance, tailoring to, you can think about sports, then you could think about basketball, then you can go down to the level of a team or a player or a venue or a game or a shot or something. Like I can see how like you're just and as you go sort of narrower and narrower, the empathy that you're building for like the person who's consuming the ad is just growing and growing, where this person is like, oh man, this ad was for me, whereas 5, 10 years ago, um, the industry was all about one-to-one personalization and blah 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 blah, but it all fell flat because everybody was like, yeah, I don't know, this ad is for basketball. Within basketball, I'm using air quotes for anybody listening, um, there's a tremendous amount of variety, and you literally can't just make a basketball ad that's going to speak to all basketball fans. So I really like that distinction of like going narrower and narrower in just taking the concept of basketball and making it more and more almost real, basically.
Totally. And it's going back down to my favorite analogy, which is an onion layer. You take an onion, you keep going deeper. Now we're using LLMs and using AI on a more broad scale. I'm speaking. We're able to come down to the main core issue for a marketer. The issue may be at a brand awareness level, or maybe even at a purchase level
Right.
too.
Are you finding that marketers, advertisers, and agencies are thinking that way yet? Of like, hey, it's not just about basketball anymore. We can get down to the level of the player or the shot or the game. So stop thinking basketball and start thinking like whatever moments or something. Are people picking up on that yet?
Shiv brought about a great point earlier. He spoke about like how Tim Cook thinks versus how, let's say, the founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, used to think. It's the same notion. Large ad agencies who are holding companies are focused only on their stock price. You're seeing with like different mergers of large ad agencies. Independent ad agencies, I would say they're more along the lines of innovation. So for them, survival or survivability lies in creation or with innovative ideas. So I see that with a lot more independent ad agencies versus large holding agencies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean it's interesting, right? Like we are all creative people to a certain extent from our experience. Like Myles, you're a former DCO founder. I worked at Criteo for a few years, which is very much like a commerce DCO type of platform. And obviously, Akash, you're founder of Adskate. It's interesting, right? Because pre AI, we used to sit around and talk about personalization a lot, and I don't think we actually meant personalization. I think we meant permutation, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, oh yeah, we personalize things. It's like, hey, you made like 40 different versions of a thing, and like that's cute. But I think it's interesting, right? Because AI enables just like the next level of true personalization because of its ability to process data and look at sentiment, understand things in real time, and then just like the capabilities of AI to like change things and build things on the fly, right? So I think we're entering like theoretically it's the same concept as what we talked about 5-10 years ago, but now with AI we should be actually able to do it much more granularly and to the degree that we actually have been talking about it. And I think that's powerful. And Myles, to your point, like I don't know how many people are actually doing that and using the technology in that way yet, but clearly and obviously that has to be part of the future.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got like marketers, people like the three of us who like came up in a world where, to continue the basketball analogy, basketball was good enough. That was like, great. That's
Yeah.
great. It's personalized. And that's very, very deeply ingrained in a lot of people's minds. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. Hey, Akash, I have one other question for you. Just to take it slightly, actually to loop this a little bit back around to commerce. Does Adskate work with other types of assets that brands have? Like, if you're in a chat, for instance, sure, there might be ads that a platform like Google or OpenAI sort of pushes to you in the context of that chat, but then that chat is also going to be pulling things like product images, videos, creator videos, reviews, stuff from Reddit. To what extent are you starting to bump up against those other asset types outside of what might traditionally be considered ad creative?
Yeah, totally. And this is a fascinating question because I think the answer lands up being more research layered or as foundationally is more research focused. Our core thesis as a company has always been to study creatives. The format doesn't really matter. The format is more bound by what the customer wants or what the consumer is going to buy from us. So for us, even being able to study, let's say, TikTok format videos, that's definitely in our wheelhouse of things, and that's something that we are currently doing. So through that realm of studying different types of creatives, be it from a static perspective or video perspective, we're able to pull in all these metadata points, which lands up becoming useful for the consumer. So whether the consumer wants to use this, be it upstream or downstream, that's completely within their realm. And also ties back into Shiv's point too. which is how do you study the data points becomes truly the selling point or the buying point for the customer itself. And that's where I think the true catch lies.
Yeah. So if I'm to paraphrase that into like a takeaway for a marketer, it's that, for instance, the creative metadata or content metadata is not just your ads. It's any aspect of what you're selling, whether it's your own product photography or videos or descriptions, it's creators talking about it on TikTok. It's all different facets of like one body of metadata about your brand or your product or that audience or use case or whatever it is.
Yeah, truly. Absolutely.
Um, okay, let's bring it full circle. I mean, it's funny, you guys started talking about basketball. I'm the basketball guy. I didn't even get to talk about
You,
basketball.
yeah, but
So
I know. I don't know shit about
I know
basketball.
you're the
The
one
reason,
talking about basketball. Hey, Akash, are you a basketball guy?
yeah, I've been watching. I missed the basketball days from the 90s. Increasingly, I don't know, I sound like a grandpa. Increasingly, there's too many fouls in the game. So I do watch it, though, to
There were
answer your
more
question.
fouls in the 90s. Did you know
For
that?
sure. Yeah, for sure. Like a lot of elbowing and whatnot. But like the game has become more, I would say, technical now or more nuanced.
Yeah. If Adskate was a basketball player, what would Adskate be?
Mutumbu.
Mutombo? Wow, that's a deep cut for the
Nah,
listener.
nah, I'm just
Miles
joking.
has no clue what we're talking about. Dikembe Mutombo, 7-foot bruiser that threw a lot of elbows, throwing the bows.
Elbows.
So you're throwing bows, Akash. I like it. I like it.
I would say Allen Iverson because it's his short abbreviated name is AI.
Ooh, all right. We got to end there. Okay, I love that. AI. AI's got to be a mascot of the AI Edge podcast. Okay, hey Akash, thanks for joining us for this week's podcast. This is a great conversation. I mean, I learned a ton about creative and AI and the future of how we can use the technology to kind of enhance what we do from a creative standpoint, which is really powerful. So thank you for joining us, Myles. As always, thanks for being here with me, and thanks to our audience. Check out youofdigital.ai for all of our different training offerings and helping marketing teams kind of up level on all things AI in the industry. And thanks for joining the AI Edge podcast. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Akash.
it.
Thank you.